Hello, everyone, and welcome to our entrepreneurship webinar. I am Ana Santiago, Resident Services Administrator at CMHA. We're very excited to have you join us today. Our presenter, Mr. Billy Sharp, Director of Human Resources, Advertising, and Public Relations for McDonald's, will share with you information regarding and how to establish your own business. Without further ado, please welcome Mr. Sharp.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Billy Sharp, and I am Director of Human Resources, Public Engagement, and Advertisement for Ledwidge GP Management, which is to have my own small business called Billy Sharp Family Media, where we produce content by way of telling stories to inform people. Right? Am I going further? Do we want to? Oh, to just keep going. Okay, so I came today just to talk a little bit about it with being an entrepreneur. So I got started. It was 2021. I wrote a book. I wrote a book called Billy: A True Life Story. So this is my life story from a child up until I graduated. Had a rough childhood. I wanted to get some of those feelings and things out of me because it was giving me sort of a mental block. So I wanted to get that on paper. So I said, yeah, so you had the bright idea of writing it down. You wrote it down. Now what are you going to do with it? So I said, well, maybe it can help some people. So in doing that, I was sort of forced into becoming an entrepreneur because then I had to learn about how to sign contracts. I had to form a company in order to sell the book for licensing deals. Had to go through reading contracts to have the rights to my own story. So I commissioned the story for a book, TV, movie, and play. So there, Billy Sharp Omni Media was created. So then we said, well, we have some other content. We did a documentary around the first book signing. So that was another project. And then some companies came and said, well, hey, can you help us? Can you help us with advertising? So we added that to our menu. So the company now does public relations and advertisement for other companies. So at one point, I had McDonald's as a client. I had a company called Fat Boy Donuts. I had a travel company downtown Cleveland. Chicago Chicken and Waffles. But one of my things in my company was I had to have a position in your company so I could protect my brand because Billy Sharp Omni Media was small. So I had to have a position in your company, not only to protect my brand, but to make sure the advertising and programs that we put in place were being carried out correctly. So being an entrepreneur sounds easy, sounds like, but that's not true. Most businesses don't make money or make profit, we call it, within the first 3 years. It takes about that time to begin to see a return on your investment. So in that process, though, there is a lot of sacrifice, a lot of commitment. Where do you get capital from in order to start projects, advertising costs? Nothing really is free in this business as you become an entrepreneur. The first thing, though, I would say, excuse me, the first thing I would say is you have to have a product or service. What is your product or service that is unique or you have a unique view on? And people get confused on that. So I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to sell clothes. Great. Now, what makes your clothes different from the millions of clothing lines that are out there? You've got to focus in on what your product is or what your concept is. So there are tech companies with physical products like a book. This is what I started out with. This was my physical product that I own. And I said, I can take this to the masses and help people. So I put a dollar amount on it. This first edition, because it's hardback or hardcover, they call it, was $30. That was the value that I put to this product. And I have to make sure that my product does something for people that others don't. So by way of listening to my story, you can get inspired, so on and so forth. So that was my product. So you have to come up with what your product or concept is. first of all. Once you do that, then you have to look at your market. Who is your target audience? Who are you targeting this to? So with the book, I said this could help um, people from ages, I said 16 to I think I said 16 to 80, because there's different parts in the book that everybody, at least in those demographics, can grab something from. So I got my demographic, who I wanted to sell the book to. Then it was uh, a product placement. So I got a deal. The first time around, I got a deal with Amazon. I got a deal with Barnes and Noble, and I think I had one more avenue that I was selling the book from. And we started with that. So we did some online advertisement that seemed not to work, because watch this. So when you saw the book then, what would make you buy the book if you didn't know me? See, that's why those advertisements fell flat and was wasted money, because people saw the book and I saw the advertisement, but nobody would be interested in buying a book just because they saw the cover. So you learn from your mistakes, and that was a mistake that we made. We invested a lot of money in advertising that kind of went nowhere. The best place I sold the book was word of mouth. Once people got to know me, they got to be interested in my story, and then they wanted to buy the book. Not people who saw it on. We had some advertisement on Facebook. We had some on YouTube. We didn't get many sales from that, if any. I don't think, but I did. We sold the book on Amazon. Somebody had the book. Somebody who bought it had it for resale for like $80. I don't know if that book ever sold, but that was interesting to me, how somebody valued the book at $80. Guess they just wanted to make a profit from it. But in becoming an entrepreneur, you have to have a product. Then you have to identify what the pricing is of the product. Then you have to figure out who you're going to sell that product to. So, for example, I've helped open up some the owners of Chicago Chicken the managers of Chicago Chicken and Waffles decided that they wanted to part and open up their own restaurant. So they opened up Chef Carol's Exotic Cuisine. I handled the advertising and opening behind that. We picked out a location. We went through the process of doing the advertisement to get the name out there by way of different things. We dropped off flyers. And then on the west side. So we went door to door. We held some events to build that up. We did a grand opening. We put that out through social media. We start doing DoorDash and all of that stuff. So the business slowly grew to where you got to the point where you just weren't asking your family and friends to come in and buy food, but people started walking in off the street, which was the best, the best for us. So I want to keep this a interactive conversation. So if anybody has a question, now. The question was, what are good business ideas? Okay, so some good business ideas. Well, first, again, you have to figure out what your talent is or what your product is. But some businesses that never fail, clothing. People always need those. Now, the clothing part's a little tricky, because you have to produce clothing that people want to wear. But food and housing, that it's a no-brainer. So real estate, food, those are really good ones to get into. So I'm trying to think of a novelty that somebody might have. Like there's a young lady that I know that does she creates cookies, and her cookies so she has to go through the process of packaging them up and advertising and selling them. So your has to be unique and different from anybody else's product, and then you have to figure out a way, how do you position yourself in the marketplace to sell it? Is there another? Good question. Capital. That is a very good question. So this is what I recommend. This is what I did. I self-funded. Don't like to go out and ask people for money, but some people do that in order to start a company. So you first need to ascertain what it is you need to get started. So if you have a physical product, like I did, this was when we had this produced, was $16 per unit. $16 per unit. So that's why my price had to be $30. So I had to make a price. So first you have to factor in, what does it cost to produce your product? What does it cost to produce your product? Figure out that cost. Then you go about figuring out, now what is your cost for your particular product? And then so that way you can not only cover the cost of producing it, but then you can actually make some money off of the product. That's ultimately what you want. So um you have to figure out, do hair. You do hair. What makes your brand of hairstyle or the way that you do it different from going into a salon? And then you have to advertise that. It's easier now. I'll tell you, advertising is easier now because you have what we call direct to consumer. That means you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have TikTok, you have Twitter. You can talk directly to customers. There's a group of guys right now, and they make these for women, but they picked a advertising concept. They started wearing the skirts themselves. So as they wore the skirts, it got a huge buzz on the internet because people started talking about all these guys wearing skirts and generated all this buzz. But what did it do? It sent people to their site, to their page to view, because people wanted to see it for themselves, and the sales started rocking. It's all about how you market your product or service has to be unique. And your thing is to figure out, what do you, so if, let's say it's something that already exists. So skirts already exist. So these guys had to figure out what was their take on it and how it was going to be different from every other skirt that was out there. And they did it. And now they beginning to make money. I hope that answers the question. Go ahead. Oh, good. How do you build and retain a customer base? So remember, in the beginning, I said, when I started out, because my company was small and I took you on as a client, I had to have a position in your company to protect my brand. So customer trust is really important. So first of all, you have to have a solid product, a solid you say it's going to deliver to the customer. So I said, my book would deliver, at the time, would deliver inspiration, if that's what you were looking for. So I had to deliver on that. How do I retain? Be honest in your business deal. So if I say I'm going to get this book to you within 2 weeks, it's got to be delivered to your home within 2 weeks. I have to deliver on promises that I make. So it's how you keep customers coming back. Go ahead. Uh, yeah. Okay. Beginner step is really important. First, it's a lot of research. A lot of research. Depending on what your particular field is, you need to do some research. I recommend that if you're going to do this and do it seriously, there is some further education that you need, meaning higher education. Get some kind of business management certification first, because how do most people who come into money, a lot of money, quick, are broke in the next 5 years, is because they have poor money literacy and no business acumen. You have to learn how to read contracts. If you don't know how to read a contract, you're going to lose most of your money because somebody else is getting your money and you're unaware of it. So, for example, I had some friends who started a rap group, and they came to me and they knew I did this sort of thing. So they said, "Can you read over our contract?" I said, "Yes." So I read over the contract. I went back to them and told them, "Do not sign this contract." In the contract, in that contract, in the small print, was they did not get any residuals from overseas sales. That is sales of the music, sales of any kind of advertising materials. They didn't get any of that. So I told them not to sign the contract, because what if they were big in Tokyo and did bupkis in the United States? So that means that they would be outperforming and the record label wouldn't get anything. So you have to be really careful about contracts. So build up your business acumen, get your proper licensing from the state. Like I had to have this certified. I had to have all the paperwork to show that I owned it. So you have to go out and get that. That does cost money. I think then there was like $50 per license back then. And as you choose different licenses, so in another business like a food license, all that stuff costs. So you have to do your research on what to take for you to be a legitimate business. Because there's a downfall to not doing those things properly. So for example, if I open up a restaurant and I didn't go to the city to get a food license, the city can come in and shut me down. So you have to do the research on what it's going to take to start your business. I would say those are the beginning steps. And I'll go one further. We were talking a bit about financial resources. I would self-fund. That means I would save up money to begin my business as opposed to borrowing, because in the beginning, my intake is probably going to be slow as far as cash flow, and I don't want to be paying off the bills and people that I owe, and now I'm not making any money. All right. Is there another question? That's a really good question. What are some tools that you can use in order to start your business? The first one would be I would go to the Urban League. The Urban League has a program to help people start businesses. They actually have a loan department too. If your business has been in existence for a while and you need to maybe grow, you want to expand the physical business, meaning build on or buy equipment, they have programming for that. But they require that your taxes be in order, all your books are in order, but they don't tell you to go away. They actually have a program to help you get that in order. So Urban League is one, and NAACP is another. They have materials on how to get started. I would also reach out to the Better Business Bureau, tell you different certifications and things that you need in order to start your business. So those three, I would say: Urban League, NAACP, and Better Business Bureau. And then oh, is it wise to open up several businesses or one at a time? I would start one at a time. Now, my business grew, so we started off with just selling books, and then we added different divisions. We added the advertising division, so on and so forth. But if I were you, I would start small, not to do 5 or 6 or 2 different things at the same time. Master one, and then go to the next one. Because sometimes you do find that your business grows based on the clientele that you get or the need. So we went from just simply putting out content, then we went to creating content by way of telling stories. So an example, I'll use Chicago Chicken and Waffles. We were helping them tell their story of their restaurant journey. So that was content that we created by way of telling their story. And it was informative for people to follow Chicago Chicken and Waffles, then transition to Chef Carolyn's Exotic Cuisine, how you go about starting a business. It was really good content we created. We're really proud. I see another question. That's another good question. So remember earlier I talked about sacrifice. Sacrifice is important. When I was writing the book, I had to sit aside an hour and a half every night to complete chapters of the book. It was rough. I cried most of the time because I told you I had a difficult chatting about those memories. I cried most of the time, but I had to stay very, very focused on. I set a goal of getting the book written and produced within a year. So it was a lot of sacrifice. Wasn't able to go out, spend time with friends, all of that. A lot of sacrifice. You have to be focused on your product. Now, that's one thing that people miss when you talk about becoming an entrepreneur. There's the family sacrifice and your individual sacrifice. Because if you want that project or product to come to scale, you have to commit to your product. I think we got another question. Okay, not necessarily. So I have multiple have technically I have 4 jobs or 2 jobs. So I have McDonald's that I work for. I have my small business, and then I have my company has 2 contracts with a company called an organization called Black Environmental Leaders. So I do have multiple streams of income, but my streams of income go like this. They kind of meet at a peak. So I'm not doing construction over here, and then I own a restaurant over here, and then I have an apartment building over here. All of my streams of income kind of are related, and I can intertwine them. So in that regard, yes, you could do it that way, but I don't recommend having 2 or 3 different businesses that don't have anything to do with each other at the same time. I think there was another question. But multiple streams of income. Another good question. So remember I talked earlier about the mistake we made with advertising, which we invested a lot of money in advertising that wasn't helping us. So if I'd have did my research, I would have found that social media advertising does not have a lesson. I learned that. So then I started doing my own advertising. Because remember, I said the only way you bought my book was that you met me. So what I started doing more public events where people could get to know me. And once they got to know me, I said I had a book for sale. They would ask, where can I get the book from? So that pushed sales. Not getting started early enough, I think, was one of my problems. I was going to write the book. It took me at least 5 years to actually write the book. Once I made up my mind that I wanted to do it, procrastinated. It took me 5 years. I should have got started sooner. So one mistake I don't want you to make is, if you have an idea, get started. I'm sorry, is there another question? What am I most excited about? I'm most excited about our nonprofit arm that we have. It's called Mission Impossible. So because we are semi-successful, we're able to invest funds into programs like Toys for Tots. We give book bags away for back to school projects. There are many community projects that we're able to invest in, and that's what I'm most proud of. We'll do an official launch on Mission Impossible next year. But we've done, if you look at my social media page, we've done Toys for Tots book bags. We team up with other established organizations to provide services like Earl B. Turner Clerk of Courts and others to provide services to the community. So I'm really, really proud of that. There was another. A good question. What do I see in 5 years? Having more clients, more employees, space at some point where you can actually walk into our office and be provided service. We want to look at that in the next 5 years, but really comfortable and happy about where we are and where the company is going. We want to create more content by way of telling people's stories to inform. All right. That is limited liability, LLC, limited liability corporation. So that means as the owner can't be sued if the company does something, um, if the company does something that hurts or harm somebody, you physically. So if the company gets sued, they can't come and take your house because you have a limited liability. So I wanted to go into that a bit in regards to financial literacy. So if you're going to do something like this, and some people just in your everyday life, it's what's called a trust. So that means technically, hold on one second. Give me. All right. So a trust allows you to own property, but you are technically not the owner. So you would make yourself the president or the CEO of the benefits of it. But legally, if I sued you, I couldn't get anything that was in the trust. So limited liability corporation kind of serves as the same thing. If I sue you, I can't get your physical, like your house, your car, and all that. I can only get what the business has. hopefully I answered that. There was one more question. Uh, it's majorly different. This is this is our newest project. You see that on the back there. Really sharp. I'm the media since 2012. Uh, and so remember I told you we tell stories by producing content. And this is a event that we're having at East Cleveland Library that we're producing community conversation. So we've grown in that people now come to me to help them promote their businesses. We did opening of Fat Boy Donuts, Chef Kelly's Exotic Cuisine, um, rich Caribbean restaurant up on Buckeye. So that's how it looks different because we started off simply trying to inspire people by selling a book, and now people are calling on us to help them open up their business, hoping to help them tell their stories for their dreams, which we're really, really proud of that. Did another question come up? So people can see the business in action. Come out to the community conversation. We call it the summit. This is being produced by Billy Sharp Omni. This the summit will be at East Cleveland Library on October the 25th. That's a Saturday. Doors open at 11. You can come and see us in action and join the community conversation. We will be talking about financial literacy as well. That'll be part of the conversation. So join us there. And thank you guys for having me.